G'day, mate. Welcome to episode 70 of the Exponential Performance Podcast. In today's episode, I sit down with ultra endurance bike packing cyclist Steve Halligan. Now, Steve Halligan has done some of the biggest bike packing events around the globe, and he is an absolute legend. I first met Steve doing the tour of Aotearoa in 2016. Great guy. He's just been over and done the Tour Divide over in America. So I thought it'd be really interesting to get him on, have a chat about his experience bike packing, where he's come from, how he approaches his training, his nutrition. Because he's a vegetarian, can throw a few issues in there for nutrition, especially out on the trail, and just find a little bit more about what he does. So if you don't know, what is bike packing? Bike packing is an event where everybody starts and then you've just got to get to the finish. Often they are 1,000+ kilometers long. In the likes of the Tour Divide, it's 4,400 kilometers. Steve done a massive 31-day Terra Australis epic in Australia, and that was 6,400 kilometers long. So the events that Steve does are huge in duration. Now, it's not like, let's say, the Tour de France or other long endurance bike races where there's team cars, where there's people helping you, people giving you food, you stay in a motel at the end of the day. No, these are all self-supported, meaning that you carry all your stuff with you. They have to decide when they're going to stop. They have to decide where they're going to get their food from. They've got to decide where the water might be found on course. These are logistical missions in themselves, not just that physical component. So Steve gets into that a little bit, how he manages that. Usually people take camping gear, or either a small lightweight tent or a bivy bag, and a lot of the times people are just stopping and sleeping on the side of the road or under trees or in little shelters in town, whatever it might be. So this is a little bit of an exploration into the world of ultra endurance bike packing with Steve Halligan. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Exponential Performance Podcast. Join sports scientist and performance coach Matty Graham to find out how to train smarter and maximize your performance no matter who you are.
Welcome, mate. Good to have you here. When I actually, long story short, I did a little bit of an interview a while ago of all of our podcast listeners and was asking them what they wanted to see on the show. Is there any sort of people that they'd be interested in hearing from? And your name was on the list. So I'm not sure if you filled out the the survey yourself, mate, but someone was super keen to hear from you. So that's one of the primary reasons that you were here.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think I first met you, it must have been 2016, Tour of Aotearoa. We were riding down 90 Mile Beach and everyone was sort of sussing everybody out. And once we got off the beach, we sort of broke away into a couple of little groups and spent the next few days riding along with you, having a great old chat. Yeah,
it was awesome.
And so before the Tour of Aotearoa, how'd you get into the whole ultra endurance mountain biking thing?
Well, I only got into mountain biking really when I came to New Zealand in 2008. Probably within that first year, I started mountain biking. Before that, I used to ride bikes, but never single track, never racing. So it's relatively recent. And then, entered cross-country races and probably got into the more longer distance stuff with the Kiwi Breves. Mm-hmm. And I think the first one of those I'd done must have been 2012 or something.
Yep.
And they've done a couple of them, and then Tour Aotearoa 2016, and then developed from there, I guess.
Escalated very quickly, one might say.
It did, and I became hooked very quickly.
Yeah. I think it's always interesting to reflect back on sort of where people have come from. And I was reading through one of your blogs again, and it said that your first race that you did was the Molesworth Muster.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, you laid on the ground exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
and you finished well down the field. I can't remember exactly what the placing was, but
Yeah.
to go from that, what's the logical progression from that through to riding across countries?
Yeah, I know. It's like the thought when I heard about the Kiwi Brevet, it's 1,100 kilometers. I was like, wow, how do those guys do that? That's amazing. And then I done it. I rode with Brian Alder from Takaka, Jeff Law from Wellington, Cliff Claremont. I remember that first year, and they had a little bit more experience than me, so it was fantastic. And then, yeah, done that, and it just gives you such confidence to look how much further you can go. And yeah, done another one, started riding more, and then I had my eye on the Tour Divide, of course. Oh, and Tour Aotearoa. I did have to pull out after 4 days on that one, injuring my knee, but I did go back and finish it a couple of months later. So yeah, it escalated, and I just found endurance, challenge, and that really is what attracts me to it.
And so you're not a professional athlete. I don't think there are many professionals in the world of ultra endurance cycling. So what do you get up to on a day-to-day basis around all of this crazy riding?
You mean my normal day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I live in Hammer Springs. I run a wellness retreat with my wife, Mary Jo. We've been running this retreat called Vibrant Living Retreat for 4.5 years now in Hammer Springs. So I take care of a lot of the food side of it, bookings, and helping with everything. It's quite general, really. We have permaculture gardens, got my own chickens over there, but we work as a team. Yep. So yeah, we run retreats, and we do B&B accommodation and day spa massages and lots of other modalities. So it's quite varied and flexible. Yeah.
So you balance that with your training, racing.
Yeah, it works really well. Before that, I'm a builder by trade, so I was building, and now it's much more flexible for what I'm doing now. Lots of riding my bicycle. I make it work for me.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. The way it should be. Yeah,
it's good, man. It's a good balance.
Yeah, awesome. So just jumping back to the Tour of Aotearoa 2016, 4 days into it, talk to me about your knee. What was happening there?
Yeah, I think it happened, and it was only a couple of months after that. I think this is where it actually happened. Was heading up that big climb before the bridge to nowhere. It was quite, muddy and slippery, and my two wheels started sliding, and I saved it, and I didn't crash. But I think I put pressure on my knee. Seb Dunn was behind me, and he was like, "Wow, you're lucky you didn't come falling into the mud there." And yeah, the day after was really painful. Started swelling up, and then of course rode all the way to Whanganui, rested there that night, and got to Masterton. And then, it was too painful. I couldn't put any pressure on the pedal. So, yeah, I called it quits there.
Yeah,
so, that was really, really frustrating at the time, because I went down and got the train down to the ferry then, and Anya, and I don't know, were you on the ferry? You must have been.
No, I dropped.
Were you not there?
By that stage.
You weren't far behind.
Yeah, that day after Whanganui was everything sort of blew to pieces.
Yeah.
The blood sort of blew to pieces after Ollie got his shoes stolen.
Yeah.
I blew up in a big way. My legs completely cucked it. Cliff was off the back somewhere in a motel somewhere.
I was just so disappointed to miss out on so much fun and riding with such a good crew as well,
Absolutely.
But I've done it, and I've done it again, and I'm doing it again next year. So.
Oh, you are awesome. And so you went back. Was it like a month or two later and finished it off?
Yeah, I think it was about 6 weeks later. My knee was, feeling fine, and I got the ferry across, got the train up to Masterton, and completed it in another 6 days, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. And you must have been stoked to nail that one finally.
Yeah, I was too stubborn not to do it.
Yeah, good man.
Really wanted to do it. It was really cool.
And so the next big race after that you did was the Tour Divide, which for those that don't know, go from Banff, Canada, all the way down to New Mexico, sort of along the Rocky Mountains there.
Yeah.
That's about 4,500 kilometers, isn't it?
I think it's 4-4 actually.
4.
Yeah, about that.
What's 100 Ks between mates?
Yeah,
eh?
exactly. In that sort of race, it's not much.
So you didn't have the best of luck on that. Was it a bit of few mechanical problems on the first day?
2017, after about 100 kilometers, I ripped my derailleur off in this incredibly sticky mud. Yeah, so I tried to fix it, tried to make it single speed, and it wasn't really working out that well for me. And it was cold, it was raining, so I decided to walk. So I walked for about 5 hours to a small little village called Elkford, and then stayed there. The next day I had to get a ride, hitchhiked to Fernie, which was 60 kilometers away, where there was bike shops.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it fixed and hitched back to rejoin the route, of course. And yeah, I lost 24 hours about before starting up again. So yeah, it was a bit of a bummer, but once I got going again, I was happy. It was really cool catching people and chatting to people. Yeah, and I finished it. So
yeah, awesome. There's so many things that can go wrong, and they usually always do, don't they?
yeah, well, so many things. Like, there's so many variables. You know, you can make all the plans you like, but you got to be prepared to change that plan, because otherwise, yeah, not good.
So following that, in 2018, you did the Terra Australis. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, it's the Terra Australis Bike Epic.
Yeah, and that was huge.
Yeah.
Talk us through the stats of that one.
Oh my God, yeah. So it was the inaugural one, the first one. It's on right now, actually, but there's only 3 people doing it this year, I think. It's 6,400 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
All the way from the northerlymost tip of Australia, top of Cape York, to the southerlymost tip of mainland Australia, a place called Wilson's Promontory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing ride. It took me 31 days, all sorts of terrain, weather, everything. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so how do you get through 31 days of riding? Like, what's the process for you? What does it look like? Do you break it down into days or stages or certain landmarks, or how do you approach 6,000 odd kilometers of riding?
Yeah, definitely into stages, and then smaller stages and micro stages. And the micro stages will be pretty much the next place you get a service where you can buy some food or whatever. And then bigger stages might be every 1,000 kilometers or something. So you have these targets, and it's nice for me anyway to have that. Yeah, just to break it up, because if you think you've got like 4,000 kilometers to go, that can be mentally tough, and when you're in the middle of nowhere. So it's nice to think you have another 150 or 200 Ks to go, and you're there. So definitely break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been many times where I've been, let's say 5 hours into a 3 or 4 day ride, and you're absolutely spent, and you can't think about the next 1,000 odd kilometers you've got to go, or let alone 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers in your case. How do you manage your sleeping? Do you look for motels, or I think I read you spent 6 nights out of those 31 days in beds, say in a hotel. Everything else was spent camping out.
Yeah, it was in Australia. The weather was generally pretty warm and hot, especially in the northern half, a bit colder in the mountains. Yeah, I'm quite happy. I nearly always carry a tent and my sleeping bag, sleeping mat, so it's quite comfy, and I'm quite happy camping anywhere really. I went into sports fields, slept under balconies, school grounds, stealth camping wherever. wherever's, you can lay out your mat or set up your tent. I'm quite happy to do that. And normally it's, late at night and I'm away before it gets bright, so you're not really noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a classic bike packing bum.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Sleeping around the place.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess that brings us to 2019, to the Tour Divide again.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had a few things to make up for after your first one, losing that 24 hours with your broken derailleur. So what was your sort of mindset going into the Tour Divide for 2019? What did you want to get out of it?
Again, I just wanted to give it my best shot, and obviously I was hoping for a clean run without any mechanicals. I was really looking forward to it. I was pretty confident. My training had gone well. Just to give it my best shot, really, and enjoy it. Yeah.
And you ended up coming in 16 days and 3 hours, if I read things correctly.
I think so, yeah.
And a very close finish towards the end there.
Chris, who won it, I think it was 15 days and I can't remember how many hours. I ended up fourth place. I wasn't second with 2 days to go, but my knee flared up probably from my 2 crashes in Colorado, which kind of hurt. So it was kind of annoying to lose a couple of places like that, but overall, once that happened, then I had to stop for 14 hours just to rest this. It was just a matter of getting to the finish, really. I had to kind of just accept that and get to the end. So
yeah, knees and like ultra endurance cycling.
My God.
If you can look after your knees and come up with a bulletproof knee, I think it makes such a difference, because they always get such a hammering, don't they?
They do. And since Tour Aotearoa, when I did hurt my knee, it was fine all through more Kiwi Brevets and the other Tour Aotearoa. No problems. I did have a couple of hard crashes, and I think that probably hurt something. And then, it was pretty painful pushing down the pedals the second last day, and it got better the last day, and I got to the end. But yeah, you're right. Knees are pretty important.
Yeah, big time.
And pedals and all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with some super extreme ultra endurance bikepacking events under your belt, how has your training approach changed over time, or how do you approach your training now if you're leading up to these events? Yeah.
I'm pretty relaxed about my training. I don't really put schedules on myself. I don't use a coach. I ride when I can, as much as I can. I like to ride with my gear, all the gear I'll be carrying, probably for about 3 months, and just get into the hills and do loads of climbing. So my approach probably hasn't changed that much in that respect. Just, getting hours on the bike and making it hard as well, and doing some multi-day trips.
Yep. If you're sort of thinking like a big training volume week for you, how many Ks or how many hours would you spend on a bike?
A big training week might be 500 kilometers. Yeah, or even more if I do like a 3 or 4 day multi-day. I'll try and kind of replicate what I'd be doing in an ultra endurance race, which is often between 200 and 300 kilometers a day. So it can differ, but I like to get definitely a few weeks with that amount of Ks in, just to get the legs used to it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And is the majority of your training volume sort of steady aerobic pace riding, or do you insert sort of higher intensity interval work in there at all, or?
Yeah, I do. I enjoy riding on my road bike as well, and I'll just do intervals on the hills, up the streets in Hanmer, or down to the bridge and back. Yeah, so I do some higher intensity as well.
Yeah, awesome. Bit of a mix.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously hills as well. Lots of hills.
There seems to be, there's definitely a lot of hills in Tour Divide, and there's a lot of hills in Tour Aotearoa, as you know.
Yep, plenty of them.
Yeah, but I have nothing against climbing. I like it.
You do. You climb very well. If Chris Froome loaded up his bike with bikepacking gear, I think he'd be a match for you.
Yeah. It's kind of, people ask me, oh, would you like to do Tour de France and all that? Oh, they're so different, you know. Like those guys probably struggle to do this, and I'd struggle to do Tour de France. They're so different, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really interesting. And when you're looking at your gear, I remember from Tour of Aotearoa, you had a pretty lightweight setup from what I was seeing. How has your setup changed over time with sort of experience and selection of stuff?
Yeah. It's probably got lighter. I've spent probably a bit more money on, lighter gear, more compressible. As I said, I normally carry a tent. I just like to have a tent as opposed to a bivvy for the most part. You tweak all the time and you learn things on every race. But the last few times I've been really happy with my setup. I'm used to it. It's, got everything I need from waterproofs to shelter. So, yeah.
And you've got some really good articles on your blog as well about the gear that you take for different events. You lay it all out. And so if anyone wants to see that, we'll selfpropelled13.com. That's your blog site.
Yeah,
right?
That's my blog website, but there's some stories and pictures on there.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff on there, some super interesting stuff.
Thanks.
Do you carry anything for cooking when you're out on these long rides?
No.
Because a lot of people, it's a big hurdle for them to get over, isn't it? This concept of not taking something to cook food.
Yeah. I do if I'm just maybe training. I potentially would, but racing, no. I just kind of buy what I need as I go.
Yeah, so now that we're sort of moving in that direction of nutrition, what's your daily nutrition like, just on a day-to-day basis in terms of training? What's sort of your approach to nutrition?
For training, eat pretty healthily, been vegetarian for about 20 years. Yeah, breakfast, I love porridge. Lots of veggies, rice, pastas, and fruit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, generally eat pretty well. Yep. It can be a bit more difficult during race time, of course, to get all those.
Yeah, so that sort of vegetarian nutrition can be a little bit harder on the road, eh? So how do you go about getting what you need, say from a service station or from a petrol station or the corner dairy?
Yeah, I tend to go for bananas, nuts, salted nuts, getting a lot of salt in there. Sandwiches, if I had vegetarian ones, Snickers bars or whatever, and power bars, protein bars. There seems to be a lot more protein bars now. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. In America, for instance, it was nearly all service stations all the way. I hardly had a sit-down meal in the whole route. So they had good selection of protein bars and not always bananas. There was some Subways along the way, so Subway sandwiches. So yeah, it can be a little bit tricky, but you manage.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one thing, because I mean, in New Zealand, one of the classic ultra endurance bikepacking foods is pies. You can tend to get them anywhere. They taste pretty good when you're cold, and you can eat them for breakfast when the pies are colder the next day. They don't get all squished up. And so I mean, with pies off the menu, I'm not even sure how you do it, to be honest with you.
There is some vegetarian pies, I guess, and if I see one of those, I'd grab one. You know what it's like. You will just grab what you can when you need it, because you get pretty hungry on these things, and you might down some soft drink, which I don't normally drink, but on things like that, you'd have a Coke or whatever.
Yep.
You just burn it off, I guess. But yeah, you get
Absolutely.
what you can.
It's fuel for the engine at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It seems to be all right. It seems to work.
So if you're sitting down to plan out, let's say like a tour divide, what's your approach to the race in terms of like the strategy of how you approach something like this, how you plan your sleep, how you plan your pacing, that sort of thing?
Yeah. I really don't plan it that much. I just go into it, and I guess my rough plan is I always seem to ride until at least midnight. I like riding well into the evening, and then stop for like 3 or 4 hours, 4.5 hours, and then normally up before the sun rises and moving again. But that can change too. If I'm feeling really good, I might ride into the night, a bit longer, and, have less sleep, maybe 2 hours. So, but sleep is crucial, I think, I've done, I've done one all-nighter in the last tour divide, and maybe one in the previous one, but I feel that it catches up with you, and you might suffer, the day or day after doing
Absolutely.
that. So for me, sleep is important. 3 hours at least.
Yeah, so you're looking like 3.5, 4 hours of sleep a night. So, which works out kind of good. Like in New Zealand, pretty much all of the brevets that we have here, there are mandatory sleep times. And I always find that 4 hours is kind of a nice number, because you're guaranteed at least 4 hours sleep.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice having to have that, It
is good. Yeah, I've nothing against that. It's good.
But yeah, running on less sleep does become quite intense, doesn't it? Multiple days in a row. So what's the sort of least amount of sleep that you'd sometimes run on, or when would be times that you would take those shorter sleep blocks?
Yeah, if I'm feeling really good and maybe I'm chasing down someone, and I feel if I do a shorter sleep block I can gain some ground, and I go pretty well on, not too much sleep. Even in general living, I'm not a big sleeper. Like 7 hours is normally enough for me. So I guess that kind of fits in with my ultra endurance riding, So if I'm feeling good and feel I need only a couple hours sleep, if it is good quality sleep, 2 hours, or just get up and go again.
And are you one for setting an alarm and getting up super early in these rides as well? So like you said, you would ride to let's say midnight, get a few hours sleep, and so you'd be getting up at like 3, maybe 4 a.m. again. Yeah,
I'd always set an alarm. Yeah. A couple of times I've pressed the snooze and slept through it a few times. But
before you know it, it's 2 hours later.
Yeah.
I always find it super hard, because I usually, in say like a Great Southern Brevet or the Tour of Aotearoa, I'd always plan my sleep. So I'd ride a little bit later into the night and then sleep so that I would wake up as it was getting light. Because I always found it so hard to have that alarm go off and just be completely exhausted and then have to get up and ride in the dark again.
Yeah.
I always struggle with that.
Yeah, you're right. Well, probably the most challenging thing for me is getting up, as you say, when it's dark and it's freezing cold. Like some of the nights in Tour Divide, you're up pretty high altitude. It's so cold, and you're putting on the cycling gear, the shoes, the socks, and they're often wet, and we had snow to deal with. So that's really, really hard. And you're waiting for the sun to come up, and it might be over the mountain, so you might have to wait an extra hour before the sun hits your skin. So yeah, you're right, that is challenging, but yeah, that's what we do, isn't it?
Get it hard enough and get on with it. That's interesting. And how do you go around pacing as well? Are you looking to ride a certain number of hours a day or a certain mileage or kilometers per day?
No, I don't really have any targets in kilometers or hours because it can depend on the terrain as well and, the weather. Yeah, just how I feel really, But it's normally 18 to 20 hours,
Yep.
I would say, with a few stops here and there, getting food. Yeah.
And
But I don't have a plan as such.
Yep. Sort of loose guidelines that you stick to.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty, I don't really come up with too many strategies or plans in that respect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Because I know, some riders are super calculated, aren't they? They've got their wee spreadsheet that's laminated in their back pocket. That's got, this is where the food is. This is the kilometers and riding very scripted, so to speak. But kind of the opposite.
I do normally use cue sheets, but just mainly for, some information about where food is and distances. Mm-hmm. But if I don't reach that, like the thing I love about self-supported ultra endurance riding is you got everything on your bike. So I don't feel like I have to reach a town. If I don't reach it that night, it's going to be there in the morning. So I'll just ride in and then I can grab food then, So it's not crucial if I don't make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, if you're camping and, you don't have to get to a town to sleep, then...
It gives you great flexibility,
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. So I read in one of your race reports that I think it was one of your earlier Tour Divide potentially that, it didn't really matter how much you trained or how much you prepared, that mental attitude was everything, I think it said. So do you do anything specifically leading into an event to sort of get your headspace in the right space? Or how do you approach it mentally?
Do I do anything specifically? We're a wellness retreat here. We do meditations. I'm a pretty relaxed guy. Pretty positive. So do I do it? I don't know. When I'm actually in the races, I'm doing I make up my own affirmations, or as I go, you're always kind of thoughts running through your head, just thinking positively really, because, you can't let any niggly injuries or anything get into your head, or, it'll just fester away. So, that
positive attitude.
You have to be ready for it.
Absolutely. I mean, that positive attitude is such a big thing. Like, if you're thinking day one of the Tour Divide, so you're not even 1/16 of the way through it, and you've got a broken derailleur. How do you mentally deal with that? It'd be so easy just to say, bugger it.
Yeah. That was particularly tough. I remember I was like cursing, side of the road. It's snowing, freezing. 100 riders passing me, and then walking. So, I just said, all right, I'm not quitting, because I came all this way to do the Tour Divide. And when I got back to the small village, and I actually got a motel that night, and I just refocused, and I just asked myself, what's the bigger why? Why am I doing this? And, I want to do my best and want to be up there. But ultimately, I want to be just riding my bike in a new country, on a new trail, and having fun, because, an adventure. Mm-hmm. So, the next morning I was totally different. So I said, all right, I'm going to get to Fernie, fix my bike, get back in the route. And I actually had such an amazing time riding down the country. And, I had a target of getting to the top 10, and I finished 4th that year. So, it went really well. Overall, I was delighted with that run down the route.
Fantastic. I mean, that's another thing as well, is if you hadn't kept that positive mental attitude and focused on how do you get back in the race even, how do I get my bike fixed? I've got to get here. I've got to hitch a ride. I've got to, get that fixed. I've got to get back onto the route now and then actually start again. If you couldn't actually string all of those things together because you're so frustrated or so, tunnel vision of this sucks now because of, 100 riders are in front of me, turns to custard pretty quick.
Yeah,
and
of course.
and likewise in 2019, having 2 crashes in 2 days.
Yeah.
Again, what was your thought process around those?
The first crash wasn't too bad. So I fell on my side and kind of hurt my ribs a little bit. The second crash it was after dark and I hit some mud and went down pretty hard and busted my nose and hurt my hand, which was a crack in my metacarpal, it turned out to be. That was pretty tough, I guess. But again, I had a sleep, cleaned up, refocused, reset my energy, I guess, and the next day things were brighter, a bit sore, but back in the race, and I was still in a good position, and I guess I've had a few challenges, so I'm kind of getting used to it now, so I can pick myself up pretty quick. But as you say, it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole, I guess, and think, oh no, how am I going to do this? And these ultra endurance races, like up to 50% don't finish them. 50% of the riders don't finish most of them. So they're pretty tough mentally as well as physically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would tend to agree with you that it is more mental than physical. All you have to do is keep riding. That's all you have to physically do, and is keep riding, which is not actually a very hard thing to do when the pace is relatively low after the first few days, and everyone sort of gets into their endurance plod. It's the people that decide that they can't do it anymore and they need to stop. They're the ones that stop.
Yeah, exactly. And like I just said to myself, this too shall pass, because nearly everything passes. Like the headwind won't be there forever. The storm won't be there forever. Even aches and pains, it's all just energy and it'll move, It's just, the pain is probably just blocked energy. So it all shifts and moves. So it's not going to last forever. So that's my mindset anyway.
It's a great thing as well with, like everyone says, like when you're in the midst of a huge hill climb or a block headwind and it's consuming your life, I literally think, when was the last time that the hill didn't end? Do you know what I mean? Like I've never ever ridden up a hill that hasn't ended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've never ridden into a headwind forever.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you actually start logically thinking about it, it's like, well, it's just, you just got to get on with it, don't you?
Yeah, just keep pedaling as slow as it might be. You're still moving forward. You're still getting there. You're still getting to your destination as such, Yep. Yeah, so keep moving.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. Yeah. And I always think about it as well that, kind of bike packing or ultra endurance riding is the person that can ride the slowest, the fastest, because the intensity just drops out of, everybody's legs pretty quickly after the first few days, and everyone's just crawling along at a relative speed in terms of, if you looked at the, say, a Tour de France or your normal bunch ride or whatever it is on a Sunday, you tend to creep along, and it's just who can do that the fastest, who can go the slowest, the fastest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
What would your tips be, Steve, for people looking to get into bike packing? If you, couple of key tips for those people that were, say, signing up maybe for a brevet or a Tour of Aotearoa?
Yeah. Well, I'd definitely say maybe start with the smaller ones. Kiwi brevets. It's 1,100 kilometers or whatever, but just to get a taste for us. Test your gear in your training, sleep out, in the mountains and ride, slowly build up your riding, carrying food and being just self-sufficient really. Yeah.
Yeah. being comfortable just being in the middle of nowhere, eh? In the
Yeah,
middle of
that's
the
a big
night.
thing. Yeah, exactly. Because New Zealand generally for wildlife is pretty safe, but there's always a bit of apprehension in North America for mountain lions and grizzlies, and then in Australia, of course, those crocodiles and other creatures. So yeah, like not everybody's kind of comfortable with that. So that's something you got to deal with.
Absolutely.
Mm.
How did you get on in Australia with all of the creepy crawlies over there? Did you have any enter in your tent to wake you up in the morning?
No, I didn't. I think that's why I like my tent, because it's a little safe haven, you know. I seen didn't see any crocodiles. Yeah, seen heaps of wildlife though. Yeah, lots of snakes and scorpions and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, didn't get any bites or anything else. It was pretty good.
No dramas. Good. You're still in one piece. Well, largely in one piece.
Yeah.
Broken hand and now what? Broken collarbone.
Yeah, I broke my collarbone, still in the sling, 3.5 weeks ago. Just up the road from Hammer Springs, would you believe?
I was
kind of funny.
I was following your Tour Divide pretty closely, especially on Instagram with all your posts, and it just seemed like it was one thing after another, and you finally got home, and then you found out that your hand was broken, and that wasn't too much of a deal, and then you bloody go out and break your collarbone. I was like, geez, give him a break.
I know, like it's crazy. The last few months I actually had a crash pre-Tour Divide on the Heafy track.
Yeah.
And hurt my ribs. 2 crashes in the Tour Divide. Then after the Tour Divide, I went to Ireland to visit my family, and I got knocked off my bike on a roundabout by a car. And then I come back to Hammer Springs and I get wiped out by a possum 3 kilometers from here.
Mate,
So
you're just
like
an accident waiting to happen.
There. I know. That's the end of it now. That's it. No more.
No more. Oh, no, Steve, it's been brilliant to chat to you, mate. And where can people find you if they want to sort of follow you online or find out more about what you're up to?
I'm on Instagram at halligan.steve. And then from there, there's a link to my personal blog site with all kind of my stories and blogs from all my races and other information on there. So that's probably the best way.
Yep,
Or else look up
Self-Propelled
Vibrant
13.
Living Retreat. Yeah, exactly.
And then Vibrant Living Retreats operating out of Hamner Springs. And I've been looking through your guys' website, well, a couple of times, but today, especially before we had this chat, I definitely think I'm going to schedule in a couple of weeks away from the kids, try and get the wife up there.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you should come up. We've got plenty of room here.
Plenty of room, plenty of riding. It looks incredible.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to live in Hammer Springs because, we've got the mountains right there, gravel roads to Blenheim or St. Arnaud. You can do loops. I ride to Kaikoura quite a lot, and we've got pretty good, nice single track here as well. So it's a pretty good place to live.
Yeah, brilliant. It looks phenomenal. And I'll put all those links over on the Exponential Performance Coaching website under episode 70. So if anyone's listening to this and they want to check out Steve or reach out to Steve and contact him, then you can do so through that and the show notes over there.
I'm always happy to talk about bicycling.
Mate, he loves a good chat about bikes. Awesome. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you, Matt. That was awesome.
Mate, thanks for listening. If you would like to support this podcast and see it continue into the future, you can do so in a number of ways. Firstly, make sure you subscribe to this channel on whatever platform you are listening. Like and share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. If you're feeling really generous, head over and leave a review and a rating over on iTunes. This helps spread the word and develop the podcast. All of this will help the podcast continue long into the future so we can keep bringing you the information you need to train hard, but most importantly, train smart.